Good morning and welcome to Veterans Heartbeat on the Pulse of the Veteran, where we discuss issues of health, happiness, opportunity, and well-being of interest to the veteran community, their families, and the community who honors them.
Good morning and welcome to another episode of Veterans Heartbeat, brought to you by River, the Rural Institute for Veterans Education and Research. My name is Jason Zencraft. My co-host Ed Lisowski is here with me, and he is the Executive Director of River. We welcome you to weekly wide-ranging discussion of issues, events, opportunities, and needs in our veteran community. As said before, we're sponsored by River, who offer many services to veterans, such as free weekly vestibular disorder testing and educational programs that focus on veterans helping veterans. So this morning we have Dr. Ibsen with us, who is an ER doctor for about 30 years, and he's also the medical director for River. How you doing this morning, Dr. Ibsen?
I'm great. Better than I think I am.
Aren't we all? Well, do you want to start off by kind of giving a background of who Dr. Ibsen is, you know, where you come from and what you've done?
Yeah, thanks, Jason. I've been in Montana since 1991. I've been living in Helena since 1996. I have, like you said, I have a 30-year ER career. I opened an urgent care in 2010. That's been sidelined for a couple of months. And so I got involved with the River program as an opportunity to maybe give back, serve some vets, because I noticed that they're not getting their needs met. So I'm here to help with that.
Well, Dr. Ibsen, this said, you've been really a great source for a lot of veterans out there. I know that you have other kind of clinics that you're working with the vets, but in the veterans world, we have 2.5 doctors for all the vets in the, all the way from like maybe Polson down to the Bitterroot?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So River has become a stopgap with its urgent care medical clinic. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to bring you on, is to talk a little bit about the medical issues that we're seeing. We've talked quite a bit about the vestibular. But before we get into that, you had an interesting trip here recently. Can you tell us about your trip to India?
Oh, yeah, sure. I went to India for my third trip. My first trip to India was in 1989. I got a chance to work with Mother Teresa. Last year, I got an invitation to join a group of medical practitioners opening a hospital for the Dalai Lama Foundation. And the Dalai Lama built a hospital in this very remote area of the Himalayan mountains to take care of the Tibetan Buddhists that live in this valley called Zanskar. We went last year. We were expecting to see a few hundred patients. We saw 1,700 patients. It was kind of overwhelming. And we got invited back. I guess they liked what we did. So we got to go back this year for another 30-day stint, and we saw another 1,400 patients in a 3-week period of time. So the population there is an agrarian society. It's almost like going back to a third world culture. The good news that happened this year is the Dalai Lama actually visited the valley while we were there, so we got to be interviewed with him. He asked us lots of interesting questions. He laughed at my joke. You know, all kinds of great stuff happened. It was an opportunity to do something completely different in a culture that's completely different. So I learned a lot, and I gave a lot. So it was a delightful opportunity. And I feel like I've recovered some of my interest in medicine and some of my desire to take care of folks that was sort of waning before I left. So it was a good charge in the arm for me too.
Well, it's kind of interesting that you got to meet the Dalai Lama. Not many Montanans have met the Dalai Lama. No, and he's such an enlightened being. If I could tell you a little story, he came into my exam room at the hospital, and they had mislabeled it, as things happen in India, and it was labeled as an X-ray room. So I do have an ultrasound machine over there and do a lot of ultrasounds on patients because it's a very remote area, and that's a medical application that's useful in that area. So he walked into the room and he said, "Oh, X-ray, huh?" And he didn't see any X-ray equipment. And I said, "Well, Your Highness,
I have an ultrasound machine, and by the way, I had mounted this cat pillow on the wall. So I pointed at it and I said, "And we also do CAT scans." And he just laughed. He said, "Ho ho ho ho." So, not only do not people get to meet the Dalai Lama, they don't get to make him laugh with a joke. So, I'm a double winner.
Well, we see a lot of veterans that lose their focus with any kind of religion in the crisis work that you and I have done. It's kind of unusual, and it's kind of nice to hear that your spirituality is regaining after that trip.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, well, you know what? I think that PTSD that veterans suffer from isn't necessarily solvable with a pill. That can handle some certain symptoms or help people sleep or something, but most of the veterans I know are looking for something like a way to transform their PTSD symptoms, or, ultimately I think that's a spiritual conversation. People benefit from Native American sweat lodges, or, pilgrimages to the Far East, or pilgrimages to Jerusalem, and getting PTSD symptoms is sort of like starting on your own particular yellow brick road, and I think it involves an ability to understand and find something greater than yourself, because PTSD patients are often quite isolated. And my comment for that is, don't go into your head by yourself. Bring a friend, because it's a dangerous neighborhood. So anything anybody can do that is in the transformational realm is gonna help long term a lot more than this pill or that pill, in my opinion.
Yeah. And we've seen that an awful lot with the River program, haven't we, Jason?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very prevalent.
We put the fun back in dysfunctional, right?
That we do with the recreational program.
Exactly.
If they would get rid of this smoke, they can have their fires, just get rid of the smoke.
Exactly, yeah.
That brings up...
Well, smoke brings up respiratory questions.
Yeah, let's talk about that. You and I have agreed that we will be doing a respiratory clinic Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays at the Rural Institute for free for veterans or their sick families. What we initially will do is oxygen and sterile water nebulized. Can you explain that a little better than I can?
Well, there's a lot of smoke in our valleys these days, and so a lot of people with respiratory complaints are flared by that. Given the shortage of primary care providers for veterans specifically, we're seeing a lot of folks who are unable to get seen due to their respiratory complaints, and if we can kind of get them over the flare that's happening from the smoke, we can save them an ER visit. A lot of veterans are finding that their ER visits aren't paid for. That's a whole other financial burden on someone who's suffering already and has PTSD and respiratory complaints. We just want to do our best to see if we can't help bridge some folks, get them through a couple of weeks of bad air and back to their baseline.
So what is the point where, the smoke inhalation out there, what are some of the side effects that somebody should be concerned about that would make them more motivated to come into the clinic?
Well, I think when you have a lot of smoke in the air and toxins, essentially it triggers asthma attacks more frequently than if it weren't there. So when there's bad air, people with bad lungs have bad times. So anybody with a baseline lung disease is perhaps going to feel worse when they're breathing smoky air like that. So, the usual recommendations: stay indoors, don't exercise outside, don't overbreathe when there's a lot of toxins in the air. And it's not necessarily rocket science. It's not like there's new asthmatics presenting due to the smoke in the air. These are people who've been well compensated, and it's a decompensation to get the smoke in the air. And if we can, restore them to well-being a little bit and save them a $1,500 visit to the ER, then I think we've done them a favor.
Yeah, that's one thing that I'm kind of happy with. We charge nothing for the veterans or their families to come in and have a breathing treatment. That's, the River Foundation recently purchased an ungodly amount of equipment and everything else to be able to do that.
Well, that's great. I want to thank you for doing that for these folks, because it sucks to suffocate, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, well, I want to thank you for all the medical care you're providing to the veterans.
Thank you. Well, we're a team. So on that note, if anybody is having breathing issues, call our crisis line, 540-2302. Even if it's not during regular clinic hours, call us. We can see if we can't get you worked into the clinic while you're having those issues. So, Dr. Ibsen, you've been around the block a time or two with the veterans issues and whatnot. What's the biggest thing that you're seeing right now currently? Pain. I would say that veterans who have been in country in Afghanistan and Iraq, and as far back as Vietnam, these folks are now coming down with syndromes that like back pain, neck pain, orthopedic issues that never really bothered them before, and now these pains in an aging population are becoming more prevalent. Unfortunately, we're a little bit less reluctant to treat pain aggressively than we were 10 years ago. So a lot of patients who've been treated with pain are now losing access to the pain medications that they've been used to. The VA used to hand out a lot of pain medications to patients, maybe too much, I don't know. But now people who become accustomed to receiving pain medication are no longer able to get it, and those people are really suffering. So there's that. There's the PTSD issues among many veterans. But you want to consider that conventional medicine can do great things for people and help save lives. Some of those folks are left disabled or chronically in pain, and those are the folks we really want to focus on and help the best we can.
Now, we've been working together on the vestibular program. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's an amazing discovery to find that people who have subtle disturbances in their balance system might not be aware of it. And, metaphysically speaking, it's sort of like, well, when you come back from service as an active duty participant, you really want to get your feet on the ground. You really want to re-enter society. You really want to calm down your adrenal system, which has been keeping you alive, and begin to return to a more serene lifestyle than being a sniper or being a soldier. People who have a subtle difference in their balance might have trouble feeling comfortable at home. So it turns out that a lot of brain-injured patients and a lot of patients who are manifesting symptoms of PTSD, we've begun to discover that something happened while in country, and they either had a brain injury or a blast explosion or something that has disturbed their vestibular apparatus. We're now beginning to measure that in some of our vets, and this disturbance in the vestibular apparatus, if it's a completely different treatment than the treatment for PTSD or brain injury. There's some overlap between those things. If we can get people's vestibular systems working again, they can feel more at home. They feel less unstable, and so, ironically, if their musculoskeletal system, if the whole body is unstable, obviously they're going to feel not stable. And it's a whole new way to help some vets that we never even knew existed. So it's something I'm really excited about.
Yeah, we're seeing, about a 70-80% drop in symptomology with patients that have PTSD that have been diagnosed with vestibular, now are getting treated for the vestibular.
Amazing.
Yeah. So what else do you want?
Miraculously amazing.
So let's talk about some other things that has been going on in the medical world of the veterans here. Why do you think, and I'm not picking on the VA, but I'm just curious your opinion, why is it that physicians find it so difficult to work within that system? It seems like a revolving door.
I haven't worked for the VA system, so I can't really speak to that other than what I know that happened in Helena, which is where I'm from. A lot of people in private practice went to work for the VA to get away from the headaches of private practice. And then, of course, they find a whole new set of headaches. And so they've tried to resolve the headache of practicing medicine these days, and that headache doesn't go away at the VA, and they retire or give up. So that's my best guess, is that doctors are there's a lot of turnover in doctors these days because doctors are becoming more of an employee than an entrepreneur, person with a private practice. And it's hard to sell your private practice and uproot yourself. But if you're just an employee, you can move around. So there's a lot of turnover in non-VA medical positions these days also. I think that people are having trouble being satisfied with the practice of medicine when it's essentially an assembly line type of practice. My friend Dr. Pamela Weibel in Oregon has a movement called the Ideal Medical Care Movement. And essentially her theory is that we overwhelm ourselves with too much overhead and have to work at 5-minute increments with patients, and it's not satisfying to be an assembly line doctor. And I think to the extent that that happens in the VA, then that's a lack of satisfaction there too. We want to be able to help people as doctors, and if we feel thwarted in being able to help people, like we don't have enough time or we're overwhelmed all the time, sort of like a assembly line that's moving too fast, it's not very satisfying to do just the bare minimum for someone, just to get them out the door so we can see the next person to do the bare minimum for. So essentially what doctors are asking for is more time with their patients, more ability to get fully related to their patient as a human being and really listen to them. And that's going to take some time to revamp, and it's going to take a personnel revolution because obviously if you're taking 40 minutes with a patient, based on 5 minutes a patient, you could have already seen 8 patients by then. So I think I think we feel really spread pretty thin. And I'm sure the doctors at the VA clinic in Missoula feel spread thin. There's only 2 of them or 2.5 FTEs there. And, they need 8 people to take care of that population. So I'm sure everyone in that situation is feeling overwhelmed.
We had a Korean War veteran, and I'm not naming names, come in with some medical issues, and the VA wants to send him to Denver for surgery when it can be totally done within the Missoula area, which takes away his support system. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I can see why the VA wants to concentrate its specialty surgical services in tertiary care places like Denver or Salt Lake or Seattle. All of medicine is being revolutionized that way. The problem is exactly what you're saying. It's a long travel. Need a support person to come with, and if things don't go well, you end up in a long-term hospitalization, 1,100 miles away from your family and friends. That just really stinks for people. So I think there's a balance between providing services that are essential and that are concentrated in urban areas, and providing services that are personal and concentrated in the hometowns of the people who get it. We have the same problem with people from eastern Montana who can't get services even in Billings because it's a long trip. So we've been going out there and helping those folks too. So, there's an underserved component of the veteran population that really needs some attention. And that's also around whether or not specialty services should be available more locally. I know that there's a program called Veterans Choice. I also have heard that hasn't been well funded. So there's no choice if there's no money for it.
It's not only that it hasn't been well funded, but the gatekeepers are the local doctors here that are overwhelmed anyway. So it's like, how do you get into your doctor to get a referral when you can't even get into the local doctor? So that was a big issue.
Yeah, that's a big issue. from everyone's point of view, when it comes to VA choice, they have decided to extend it another 6 months until they find a better option. That is the main problem. This vet says, hey, I have a bad back. I need to go,
chiropractor.
Yeah, I need to go wherever. Instead, they have to go to their doctor at the VA. And like you were saying, 2 doctors doing the work of 8 or 10, it's going to be 6 to 9 months to get an appointment, depending on where they are, obviously. Some states are much better than others. But for here in Montana, in a place like Missoula, I mean, it's months and months out, and then by the time they get in, then the doctor says, okay, yeah, I'll refer you here. And it's just this long, drawn-out process that most vets just say, screw it. I don't want to deal with this. I'm just going to suck it up and just deal with my bad back. And then, 40 rolls around, and suddenly, this veteran is laid up like they're 80. Yep.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I think if the primary care doctor is the gatekeeper, we need enough gatekeepers to keep people flowing through the gates. Otherwise, it's a bottleneck. It's sort of like lane gate in New Jersey, right? You limit a bunch of lanes that people can cross the George Washington Bridge, and nobody's getting anywhere. Nobody's moving. If you say someone's a gatekeeper, but you close the gate, nobody can get through it. Nobody can get access. Maybe it's designed that way. Maybe it's an inadvertent thing, but certainly we can call that to the attention of the administration of the VA and say, you can't call them a gatekeeper if nobody can get through the gate.
Well, I'm calling upon Senator Tester. Come on, Senator Tester, let's get this through. Let's get this fixed.
Yeah.
We're running out of time here. What else do you want to talk about?
Well, I think the other thing to talk about with veterans is for those of us who aren't veterans to never forget that these people have sacrificed time, limbs, and health for their country. And whether you agree with the mission that they were on or not, you got to agree that veterans need to be respected and honored as human beings and cared for just as well as we'd care for our neighbor or our family. They are family. We're all part of the same culture. And I just want to send out a plea that let's welcome our vets. Let's care for our vets. And then let's do everything we can to prevent the PTSD and the injuries that some of them get. And guess what? I got a patient I got to see, so I got to go.
Well, thank you very much, Doc.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Ibsen.
Yeah, those are great questions. Thanks, you guys. Have a great day.
Well, Jason, that was really interesting to talk to Dr. Ibsen. A lot of the vets, because he does telehealth, don't get to talk to him like you and I do. So what's your thoughts on our talk this morning?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not a mystery. This is something that we've talked about on Veterans Heartbeat again and again and again. And it may be kind of, redundant and frustrating for some of our more loyal viewers, but it's something that we continually get requested for. Hey, talk about this, talk about that, and the main thing is veterans health care. What's wrong with it? How does it need to be fixed? And, what do I do to make that change? We've thrown out a lot of suggestions and changes that we think would be a much better alternative. But, at the end of the day, you need to contact your senator. You need to get a hold of your congressman if you can and try to have them make some change at that level, because it takes an act at that level to make a change in something such as the VA. But who knows? What do you think would be a better alternative than what we have right now, Ed?
Well, right now in the veterans community, we have the old guard that fought very hard and diligently for the VA system. And I really appreciate those fights. But what I have seen is, even though they fought for it, the system is so broken that we've got to look at alternatives. We can't just leave 28,000 veterans without services, because we have seen over and over again how important those services are. Example of the suicide rates. They're going up with those guys that are not getting care. and going down with those that are getting care.
Yeah, I think the main one is burnout. These doctors, like Dr. Ibsen said, they want to help people. That's why they got into that field. I'm sure making money is a great bonus, but at the end of the day, they want to save lives. They want to help people. And how can you do that with 5-minute visits? So that is that. Burnout's huge when it comes to doctors. So then those gatekeepers, it starts making that funnel tighter and tighter. So then more and more veterans get backed up, and then it's a 3-month wait, and then it's a 6-month wait, then it's a 9-month wait, and then after that 9 months, it's another 3 months. So it's this unfortunate situation that it's easy to sit there and blame the VA, but the fact of the matter is, it's just there's too many veterans for the VA's capacity. So I hope they come up with a better solution for the healthcare and for veterans' choice, because the idea is great, but the implementation just isn't what anyone thought it would be. So I'm hopeful that they will come out with a better system that will improve on the things that are great about the VA and things that are great about veterans' choice, and then negate some of those negative ones. And
until then, River will be the safety net for the veterans in the Missoula Valley. Just give us a call, 540-2302. We'll do what we can for you.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for listening to Veterans Heartbeat. We'd not be able to bring it to you without all the support of the listeners. Thank you to our main sponsor, River, the Rural Institute for Veterans Education and Research. They have an array of services such as veterans-focused education, a free vestibular disorder clinic, and many more services. Check them out on Facebook or on the web at riverofchange.org. Lastly, we would like to show our appreciation to all of our veterans. Thank you for serving our country and keeping it safe.